Hi, it's Steve Hargadine. We've started our full day of reinventing the classroom. This is such a fun conference. Thanks
for inviting me.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks to ClassFlow for the support of this event. They've just for those of you who are participating live, you can indicate where you're located. Look for the star to the left of the map. There are a set of icons, and you're looking for the second one down. It's the star icon. You can click on the map. It's also fun to have you put a note in the chat. And if you're experiencing any kind of interesting weather, or you can tell us what time it is. According to the dots, we're entirely North America centric at this point. Last night, I think we had all continents except Africa covered in one session.
Wow.
Which was lots of fun. Rainy Toronto. Someone who knows you, Chris.
Excellent. Oh yeah, Tracy. We love Tracy.
So you can continue to put your location in the chat as we move forward, but I'm going to turn the time over now to Chris, and then Chris, I'll stick with you and let me know how I can help.
Oh, you bet. Awesome. Well, thanks for everybody for being here. It's neat seeing where everybody's at. I know someone was from Florida. I heard this morning on the news coming in that evidently you're underwater. I'm really impressed that you're communicating to us from the submarine. That's great Wi-Fi. It's just you can't go very far, which is kind of problematic, or you pull it out of the wall. I'm really excited for a couple of reasons. One, a conference like this opens up these ideas, and I was trying to explain to my wife recently, what these conferences typically do. She got to go to a conference this last week. She works in for an orthodontist. She's an orthodontist assistant and fits braces and does all that stuff. And thank goodness there are people that do that. I'm creeped out by other people's teeth. She can't wait to actually look at them and touch them. So, I'm glad that we're all built of different talents. And she went to a conference in New Orleans, and she was like, well, what are your conferences like? Well, and I kind of gave her the advice, well, you'll go to something and it won't quite be what you want, and then you'll go to something else and it will really light your fire. Maybe exactly what they're talking about, or maybe it'll inspire something else that you just kind of daydream during that session. But you'll find those sessions, those one or two sessions, that are just wow. And we got on this conversation about, about how you affect change. I mean, this is a great example of a conversation where we make change, and not that this push in changing education is a Jackie Robinson moment, for example, but often they occur this way, that somebody introduces something that is so far from the norm that people go, that must be the way to go. They see the future in that, and it's that moment where they realize that what they have always known is not going to always be. And then we see generationally, whether that's in years or in decades or in lifetimes, we see the seeds planted by that one event take over everything. Steve Jobs did that with Apple computers. Bill Gates did that with software. Jackie Robinson did that with sports and equity, and we see that coming even full circle this week with all the news in the NBA. And I believe we're at that point again, but specific to education. It's been about 150 years with very glacial minor changes in the way we do things. It's primarily been industrial, and that is about to change. And so I'm really excited to present more than 2 years of research, instructional design, and teaching using a fully game-based approach. And I'll share the results of our research specifically, but in a way that reflects the trends that we're seeing in the over 900 teachers currently involved in a beta project in 10 countries. So if you'll permit me, I'd like to begin with some overarching concepts that help to frame the why of the work, and it's important, I think, to bring these concepts first, to the front to help frame the decisions that we made along the way. And these concepts should help to illustrate why game-based learning, specifically, or quest-based approach, as we call it, is much more like class as World of Warcraft than it is U.S. history, per se, right? So the students that we teach, the landscape of education, and the role of teachers will change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 100. A shift in this educational paradigm, as we're describing here, has already begun. I mean, the internet, mobile devices, social networks, and even video games will play as much of a role in the next century as textbooks and blackboards and even desks have played in the last. We'll get paid about the same, but everything else will change, so that's good. So here's the plan for today. We're going to talk about the game, some broad themes. The game as it currently exists. What's wrong with it? Why we should change it maybe, and what changing the rules of the game would look like. I'm going to specifically point to very quickly the system that we built as a response of we want to do things differently, and there's nothing else that we can use to do what we want, so we need to build something. As a process, I'm going to describe what I think school might look like because of it, right? I mean, our education system, as we've all discussed, is maybe not as effective as it once was, largely because it was designed for a different time, a different society. For one thing, we want everyone in the modern day and age to be successful and not just find a handful of leaders, right? It's important to point out that school has always been a reflection of the society that it serves. In the 1700s, the needs of society was to educate a few leaders, landowners, primarily privileged men. A few select schools and universities did that. And as our population expanded west, schools were needed to teach the rising generations in their communities reading, writing, and arithmetic, essentially the needs of those remote communities. Think Walnut Grove, Minnesota, and Little House on the Prairie. So as our country entered the Industrial Revolution, we started seeing industrial ideals reflected. Factory rows, ringing bells, and industrial knowledge acquisition. A single treatment applied to all product to see which would respond best to it. I mean, these ideas took over with a purpose, right? Horace Mann stated that we want to rake a few diamonds from the dirt. And compulsory education in the 1850s was needed to prepare and honestly sort citizens of a completely new and different society. And racial and social equality were the imperative of education and this revolution over the last half century. Here's why this is important, because history teaches us that schools change to meet the needs of society, and by using the best tools, the best ideology, and the best organizational structures of the day. But here's the catch. Schools adopt these ideas on average about 20 to 30 years after we see these movements elsewhere. So the next major societal change is the information revolution, which began in earnest about 20 years ago. And we can expect the organizational structures of industrialism to give way to the tools and organization of the information age. And I share this with you because we often have this idea that school is what school was. And so knowing that school is going to change helps us prepare for how it will change. We don't use bloodletting anymore or leeches to cure the fever. We don't take coal-powered trains across the country, and we don't select our leaders by their bloodlines. We have more knowledge, we have better tools, and we have more perspective to guide us. And so as the world moves forward, so will education. So let's take a quick look at what school is now and how video games will change this. One thing we know that what we expect of our students in today's day and age is very different than even 20 years ago. Now, we still want these things, but we don't put these on school specifically to teach, right? What we want from our students is quite different today. We want them to have a different skill set. We want them to be better prepared for the challenges that they will face in an increasingly independent and creative world. So here's a quick thought here. We're going to talk real quick about how these things are going to change, and but we're going to talk about the game, right? The game as it exists now. I mean, let's face it, all classes are a game. We try to figure out what it takes to win from the moment we walk in. The way we prepare, interact, and even talk with the teacher is built on the assumptions that we make about the winning condition of the course. These are the characteristics of the hidden game, right? And they often distract from learning opportunities. Savvy teachers know this, and they try to slant the game in favor of learning. But students naturally ask that question, what do I need to do to get the grade that I want, rather than what's worth knowing, thinking, feeling, doing? Where does this fit in the scope of who I want to become? Unfortunately, school keeps students guessing. It delivers quizzes or requires specific papers to force a student into the interaction and the study of a curriculum, even if they're not authentically connected or interested. We often describe it as responsibility training, and when a student does poorly, we punish them, often with no hope of redemption. We gradually chip away at their success with B's, C's, and D's until it's mathematically impossible for them to be successful, right? We do this to teach them responsibility. And it's the stupidest game that I can think of, and the students really do hate to play it. More and more in our research shows us this, that we see this disconnect of students and school. They see it as a requirement that doesn't have any bearing on who they want to become. They have to jump through this hoop. College and university life felt that way for many people. The rules seemed arbitrary and unconnected to what they wanted. But there's good news, and I'm here to share with you the good news. First of all, we can change the game, and here's how. I'm going to suggest a couple of things, intentionally provocative, that we get rid of the industrial age tools. What if we eliminate homework? What if we get rid of due dates? What if we give students choice in the curriculum and let them engage in it? And what if we let them play? And what if we, if it were possible, as teachers, designers of education, to do a better job of recognizing and recording the learning that's happening in all contexts? I know it's crazy, but what if I told you that a school experience designed this way, with these elements in mind, saw a 93% success rate? That is, 93% of the students reached the equivalent A, exactly what we wanted them to know. And they reached it in less time. So hopefully I've piqued your interest. And these are some of the findings that we're seeing. So part of this approach is saying goodbye to ineffective, often coercive tactics, right? I'm certain that someone in the room was maybe put off the idea by eliminating tools that we have all been comfortable with: homework, due dates, and a fixed curricula. So let me address some of those in a moment. What I'd like to do is I'd like to first direct your attention to maybe the solution, right? We noticed some things. We noticed that that when given choice of types of activities to engage in, they were choosing things that were not curricular, but they were still learning. I love that, we often will find a student interacting with something in our classroom or around our curriculum that's not what we've laid out for them. And we often assume that they're not learning. Oh, you're just playing now, you're not learning. But playful experiences come with their own type of learning. The problem is it just doesn't align with standards that we have for that moment. But games do a beautiful number of things. Not only do they allow us choice and pathways and successes, and we credit them, they scaffold the difficult. They're wonderful opportunities to learn. We may not know exactly how we will represent that learning ourselves in the classroom, but they do a great job of organizing this activity. So we wanted to take those ideas and put them into action and build class like a game, right? We needed a tool that and an approach that already had these elements worked out. By the way, this is a very common theme in education. We find something that's working outside of education, and we bring it in and we try it in education. And not the least of which are those things that I mentioned to you before. So what will people do freely without coercion, intrinsically rewarding? And the answer is play games. So just like every major educational paradigm shift before, society created and tested the solution. And we have 30 years of research and development by Atari, who just unearthed E.T. Look it up, by the way, digging up E.T. Nintendo and scores of others. Games give us choice. They give us lots of pathways to the winning condition. They credit our successes and our failures. They allow us to fail safely. Games scaffold. They reward effort. They display progress in myriad ways, and they allow us to collect objects that are meaningful to us. We get to level up. We get to change the story. We get to have fun. And I believe the organizational structure of the schools of the future is embedded in games. And my colleagues and I use these ideas to redesign school. Here's how we did it. We call it quest-based learning. And at Boise State, we developed a game engine for learning. Simply, you score points. You gain rank. You complete quests and missions. You get badges and achievements for learning and doing. And we had to build it because, frankly, no one else had one for us to use. We were unable to repurpose any of the existing tools, learning management systems, Moodle, Blackboard, Angel, because none of them would allow us to break from the gradebook, which was this restriction about order and process, and it measured every student by the same activities rather than standards per se. So, and it's an interesting process. If you're interested in finding out how we did that, we can have that conversation at the end. But let me tell you about quest-based learning. It differs from the gradebook approach in a number of ways. Quest-based learning is a branching architecture where students are not necessarily in the same place at the same time working on the same things. In the gradebook approach, everyone does the same thing in the same time frame, largely unless they're late, whether it's appropriate for them or not. Think of it as sweeping marbles across the floor. It's incredibly difficult to get them all to go to the same place at the same time. There are some that will shoot ahead, and there are some that will get missed and fall behind. So students complete quests, which are individual learning activities, right? They're synonymous with assignments, except that quests are self-selected. They have a fixed experience point value. They're typically smaller than a traditional assignment and require a little bit less time. But many quests can be chained together into a larger activity. But because they're smaller parts of a whole, they're more motivating and provide better feedback, more incremental feedback. The standard 5-paragraph essay is a good example. Quest 1 might be, this is a thesis. It's a 20-minute quest that introduces the learner to the importance of a thesis statement, how to write it, examples of both good and bad, how to put both into both the intro paragraph and the conclusion. And the deliverables, say, would be these pieces, the intro and the conclusion version of these. Complete this quest, and you might get 3 more dealing with the other paragraphs, paragraph 1, and you would write that paragraph with some specific suggestions and so on. So these quests can be designed so that they fit together and they offer prerequisites. They can be designed by students or the teachers, or ideally both. They can offer an experience that is as simple as read and respond, watch, or build this widget using these parameters. And quests have deliverables like write this, build this, post this, interact and demonstrate evidence this way, often authentically. And you're looking at a screenshot of the interface as the student would see it, looking at quests. They're linked to standards and categories for tracking student progress. So completing a quest earns experience points, and when they meet the teacher's satisfaction, and only when they meet the teacher's satisfaction. So students can submit a quest as many times as they need to get it right. Thus, failure becomes a learning tool and part of the conversation rather than a punishment. So students are not bound to a singular path in quest-based curriculum. There's, can be 10 different ways that a student can interact with a specific concept. Like creating volume, for example. Historically, we assign 1 chapter, 3 assignments, and a quiz, right, to the topic. And it's dictated often by a textbook. But using this approach, we can do it many different ways. And students can do it differently. We talk about differentiated instruction all the time, but we've never had a really easy way to deliver that. And so I know a teacher actually who created quests that addressed geometric volume in many ways. Some kids would build paper models using graph paper. Others would use the popular game Minecraft to build a virtual pyramid and calculate its volume. As the kids play through the curriculum, they can actually do many different things on their way to winning the class. One student may complete an activity that no one else does, and that's okay. So we no longer believe that school should be designed to compare students one to another. Rather, we design school to lift student knowledge, skill, and ability in core areas that can demonstrate it authentically. So can you demonstrate an authentic understanding of statistics by trading loot in advanced World of Warcraft marketplace add-ons? Well, of course. And for the student who's interested in that, I think we should. So we can address the activities within the class that are most compelling, and we can choose those regardless of why. It doesn't matter whether the student thinks it's easy, their friend is doing it. Those things really don't matter because the tool tracks the progress against competencies and standards. We often describe this, as I mentioned, as differentiation, learner customization, and flexible curriculum. But these are all monikers really apply here. But until games gave us the tools, we've never been able to escape from the organization of the gradebook. And in many cases, a student can complete a class in this approach in the time frame that they determine. So we built in the ability to create rewards. So if a completed quest, say, exceeds expectations, an additional reward may be added. I can give you credit for fabulous creativity or for doing something maybe I didn't expect. They can be created by teachers and awarded multiple times. A student can receive a 5 or 10 XP bonus, for example, because of excellent writing, grammar, creativity, or other characteristics that the teacher wants to reward and promote. Those additional rewards can be made visible to students and friends as well. Awards can be created individually by teachers to reward behaviors. I saw you helping this other student, and I wanted to give you the Helping Hands Award today. Achievements are built around behaviors that has the system look for specifically. So if you complete 5 quests in 5 days, you can get an achievement, like Fast Starter, which you'd see on the screen right now. This can allow you to promote certain types of behaviors in class by creating achievements associated with them. Badges are more often associated with groups of completed quests. These can be used to promote activities and quests in a grouping in a way that can create almost tracking, even mandatory requirements. You need to get 3 of these 5 badges. That might be part of the winning condition for a course. Get 2,000 experience points and any 3 badges. It's a powerful way to track achievements, but it's also a way to allow a student to pursue special interests within the class, to fit a niche that's unique to them, that they're really excited about. So I think of theater class often as a place where, or music class, where students go to find a place where they belong. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I want to play the bass clarinet. But when they realize that they can do something that no one else does and they can do it better, they're drawn to these opportunities. Theater, we often see great theater tech and sound design and lighting design as specializations that people pursue because they have an opportunity to create something special that has meaning within a community. So within the curriculum, finding ways to do that and reward that seemed like a natural part of what we wanted to do. Here's one of the interesting things. Approving quests can be done by a teacher or actually any qualified assistant. And sometimes that can be a student who's already finished the class. One of the fundamental shifts in the pedagogy of quest-based learning is the idea of grading of an assignment or an activity. In my teaching, the completed quest either meets the expectation or it doesn't. There is no B-. And like a video game, failure becomes an instructional tool. If something needs addressed in a completed activity, comments are made, the quest is returned. You see the blue pill, the red pill option here. and it's returned to the student's in-progress quests as necessary for the student to demonstrate completion of the principle or competency. So rather than accepting something that the student is not proud of and the teacher is not satisfied with, the tool allows us to engage in additional conversation toward completion. And since we're not held to the arbitrary bounds of a gradebook or due date, this exchange can take as long as necessary to ensure that the student completes the competency, right? In games, players always know where they stand as well. They see the impact of completed quests and activities immediately or almost immediately. They can track their progress throughout the game. And the tool that we built for learning, again, borrowing these ideas from games, does that. The player can see their progress towards the completion of the class, right? We created ranks, which serve as short-term goals as well. And students can see the immediate impact of completed activities and unlock new activities associated with those new ranks, right? They want to see, well, I'm only 20 points away from the new rank. You'll notice on the screen here you see two sets of progress bars. The one on the bottom is the rank. That's how far they have to go to do their next rank up. And the top one is actually their distance to the finish of the course, right? Players can select their name and see their unique player card, which not only shows them progress against the different categories, which you see on the left side over there, categories and standards of the course, but it also shows them their rewards. It's a powerful way to track student learning. And again, borrowed from games, which have done this effectively for years. So teachers and designers can build quests that allow for embedded media as well. The web's filled with these rich, amazing tools, and we can bring them into these different quests. And we tag all quests initially with a Creative Commons attribution license, which means that any teacher of our beta teachers can search the entire system for quests that they might use in their class and clone them. Right? Students can also search and suggest activities that a teacher might include. So it becomes a massive database of learning activities. If a teacher in Hawaii creates a fantastic quest, I can search it and add it to my class. They get credit for the creation of the quest, but I have the power to modify it and tweak it, give it whatever deliverables I need for it to be meaningful to my students. And so all of this is covered under Creative Commons licensing, and we anticipate next couple of years we'll have the largest database of online learning, shareable online learning materials anywhere. The database is building very, very quickly. So classes can be designed a number of different ways. I'm going to actually show you two different settings here because people are like, well, what does class actually look like, right? You can build it and scaffold it so as you level up, as you see the example right here, new curriculum becomes available. Those are in those lines. You see to the extent, and I'm just going to click on it here, you know, the scaffolding of a series of quests within this, right? You do this one, which makes that one available, thus, all the way to the winning condition. It's a very different way of organizing a curriculum. You can also very easily build things into more branching architectures, not dependent on levels. That these three quests are not available until you've completed this basic one. Or that if you're really interested in this line of knowledge and quest and specialization, you can unlock it with certain parameters and self-select it. I really want to become an expert at video production as it relates to this curriculum. So all of my artifacts are going to use tools and knowledge that I'm familiar with. So I'm going to bring in the schema that I have. So I hope that this part of it is instructive. I'm happy to share with and invite into the group, into the software, anybody who's interested, and so we can connect on that. But this is the basic idea that we've designed. I'd like to, since I see that we have the time, and Steve, jump in when we get to a place where we need to pin back. But I've just got a couple of ideas, about 10 minutes worth of or less of ideas that will share this. And then I think we could probably have a discussion for those who are interested. Okay. Often we start to get some pushback, you know, when we say, okay, this is great and all, and I see what you've done. This is something that you know makes sense. You're borrowing this game idea, but this is not what school is, right? School is not fun. School is not easy. It's a slog. It needs to be as miserable for them as it was for me. No, I'm not saying that people would actually say that, but we do. We hear this rallying cry. When I go to conferences, often I'll have someone, they don't necessarily shake their fist, but in my mind I imagine they shake their fist. But how are we going to teach them responsibility if they can just choose whatever they want to do? You know, back in my day we did it this way. And so let's address, if we can, that idea of blowing up the grade book, getting rid of this tool, right? School isn't supposed to be fun. How are we going to prepare kids for the future? We're giving in. They're winning. No, right? So let's look at these industrial tools that we're using and see if they're doing exactly what we think they're doing. And this is where I think we need to rethink school a little bit. First of all, I believe that eliminating homework doesn't mean that students will fail to think or create outside the bounds of our classroom. It simply means that we won't try to regulate what they do outside of school. This typically makes them happy, right? We shouldn't really try to do that, and we really can't, because for the most part, homework does a better job of telling us which home lives, which parents are better at regulating their children's schoolwork rather than which children understand it. Often, students are not in an environment that allows them outside of school to engage the way we would expect them to engage, certainly not the way that they would engage within the classroom. And it's true, the more time they spend on it authentically, the better they'll do. But we need to have the sensitivity and the savvy, the skills to know what will work best for each student, not just the best prepared ones. Really, they split time in ways that generations before them never had to, with jobs, clubs, church activities, sports, and not just one sport, by the way. They have driver's ed, doctor's appointments, orthodontist appointments, family duties, watching siblings, making dinner, chores, the list goes on. And when faced with the overwhelming volume of to-dos, it's no wonder that some of our students give up. Ultimately, homework that doesn't get completed or doesn't get their full attempt becomes a punishment, right? We give them a poor grade in hopes that that will teach them the responsibility. But you know, you punish them enough for things that may not be fully under their control, or that they may not have the skills to manage themselves because they lack the support system, and they'll believe they can't do it. High standards are good. Punishment is bad. This idea of due dates is often a misunderstood one as well. And I'll ask you this fundamental question. If I were to give you an assignment today and give you until Monday to turn it in, type in the chat here, when are you going to start that? You have 1 week to do it. When are you going to start my one-page write-up on the Reinventing the Classroom talk? Go ahead, type it in the chat there. It's a supervised chat, so they may have to be approved. Oh, you know what? You are typing, and I am just in the wrong spot on the scroll. Friday, Saturday, procrastinator. Here's what I'm going to argue. I'm actually going to give you a lot more credit than you would give yourself, because we as people do an amazing job of triage, right? We decide what's most important, and we attend to it first. Honestly, the other things you have scheduled today, more important than what I've given you. Eating, more important. Family activities, more important. Nearly everything is more important until this becomes the most important, until it's due. So does it really take 7 days? It doesn't. And by deciding the frame of time before it becomes important, we in effect delay the start, right? We determine, in many cases, the conditions under which this activity will be attempted. Late night, short time frame, organizational structures of the due date is not ultimately for the students. It's for the teachers. It's also a very industrial tool. It's a framework we use to regulate their activity, but it doesn't work It's very ineffective. And the final idea I have for you is this idea of student choice versus a fixed curricula. And I'm going to ask you one of my favorite questions in the world. Again, I want you to type this in. And it really helps to underscore the power of student choice and why game-based methods are not a fad, but a pedagogically significant approach. So let me give you a choice. Would you rather jump off a 10-meter diving board or swim 100 meters in the pool? Which one would you choose? Swim, swim, jump, swim. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to type which one you chose, colon, the reason why. It could be a short reason. You don't have to say, one time at sleepaway camp when my bunkmate Terry did, no, you don't have to. I mean, just, I would swim because I like it, because it's easier, because it's not as scary, because whatever the reason is. Swim, afraid of heights. Jump, more fun. Immediately, the first two, Shane and Tosca, right, have completely different answers. 100 meters, less scary. I don't like the heights. Here's what we find, and here's why it's an important question to ask. Why does it matter what the learner knows, thinks, believes, or has experienced, right? It matters because we each have this unique schema that allows us to do what we do, right? Schema is this rich web of experience and understanding that we use to interact with our world, right? Schema is this network of experience-based knowledge that allows us to attend to new and old activities. And you've all had experiences that lead you to one of these decisions. So when I tell you that this is a curricular decision in my Aquatics 101 class, this is a water acclimation skills assessment, right? I want to see if you can get in the water, change direction, find a wall, and get out. Basically, do I need to put water wings on you? What happens when we give people choice is they will quickly move to the activity that is the most interesting to them. And there are only two choices here. We might have 5 in this acclimation test. I, as the teacher, the purveyor of what needs to be demonstrated and learned, don't care which one they choose. And they may swim today and by the end of the semester jump. They may have developed a schema where they're not uncomfortable with that anymore, or they want to try it, or they want to do it like their friend did it. We do better in areas where we have a rich schema built through experience. So using this schema to make educational decisions is a natural evolution. You, the learner, can choose the how in a way that I could likely not come up with, right? Choice is the paradigm changer here, and I truly believe that. We're moving from a completely dictated curriculum to one built on choice. And by allowing our students choice, we find an authentic engagement that we seldom see in other environments, in classes. As a teacher, we still create, we still find, and we filter meaningful activities, but the students can use their schema to decide which one is the best today, thus making due dates unnecessary, thus making them engaging. We can partner with them, work with them individually to build these pathways, right? And we can look at a student as an individual on a unique but parallel path. And that allows us to create experiences where the path looks different, but the outcome is what we want it to be. So it sounds good, but does it work? Right? In 2010, Dr. Lisa Dolly and I started working on a game-based learning management tool. Honestly, we scraped together about $2,000 within the department. We built an alpha version of it. A little bit later, the university threw in some money. We were able to build the beta version of it. And we called our original tool 3D Game Lab. The idea that your game was all around you in the world. It was anything you wanted it to be. And we tested it and employed it originally in just a handful of college and middle school classes, right? Since that time, the tool has been made available to over 900 beta teachers. I think we're approaching 1,000 now, and about 15,000 students worldwide, 10 countries, as a web-based learning management system, right? It collects thousands of points of data and is for each user, including clip data, and that has helped through data mining for us to describe that experience, the interactions, and the outcomes of quest-based learning. So I can speak to this with quite a bit of data behind it. So traditional success rates in classes, I keep saying 10 countries. It's now 14 countries. The traditional success rate at our university classes were described as passing the class, right? Not success in learning outcomes, right? So the number would be, just a little lower than 71%. But that's how we measured it. So a study of pre-service teacher candidates engaged in digital age teaching skills curriculum were shown to be highly successful using the quest-based approach, right? 93% of the students using the approach reached that winning condition of an A. So that's the comparison. Historically, in these test groups, we see a 71% success rate of A's, B's, and C's. In a quest-based environment, we're seeing 93% reach that equivalent A. The remainder of the students either receive an F for failing to attend, which is a common problem, abandonment rate at universities, or an incomplete. Many of them later completing the course. The results are very similar to what teachers are reporting in our classes elsewhere, depending on the curriculum, depending on the number of students and the fixed requirements they have. So in this approach, the average completion time was reduced from 16 weeks to 12 and a half weeks, with one student actually completing the entire course in 4 weeks because there were no stoppers, right? Students reported the lack of due dates and the freedom to progress in the curriculum as really motivating factors. And despite being able to walk away from the class when they reached that winning condition of 2,000 experience points and a completed portfolio, the students actually continued playing the course. The figure here shows that the student activity and XP relative to the winning condition, right? Student experience are the red lines, the white line is the winning condition, right? That's when you can walk away. Not only did the vast majority of students reach that winning condition, many exceeded the expectations. As a group, the class averaged nearly twice as many completed activities as the previous module-based iterations of the same courses. So, questions as we kind of get into these findings. What's next? With our time left, and we have about 13 minutes, I have some suggestions for you about potential next steps. But I do want to make sure that I address and answer any of the questions that you have. That's a good question, right? One of the things that I think is really valuable is to go back to something that someone I have a lot of respect for, Sir Ken Robinson, said that a 4-year-old is not half of an 8-year-old, right? And what he alludes to are these ideas of developmental stages. Things become important to us when they become authentic to us. Why does the 5th grade boy leave his hair unkept and the 8th grade boy spends 3 hours in the bathroom trying to get each hair perfectly in place? Because it has authentic value. Girls become important. Success in social situations becomes important at the developmental stage, that it becomes important. And without an entire second hour on developmental stages, I would address that question by saying responsibility training is largely ineffective. We find ourselves endlessly frustrated with the 85% who don't fully comply, thrilled with the 15% who do comply because it's become important to them, or they're operating under a different schema. Either it's important in other settings, they've learned the value of playing along, they're competitive, whatever those reasons are. We see 15 to 25% of our students meeting the expectations of responsibility training, about 60 to 70% not fully meeting those, and then another population. It's dependent on the socioeconomic status, and a ton of other factors, right? It's not just race and age related. There are a ton of things that contribute to why someone will push back from responsibility training, as you described. But meeting them where they are. So my number one responsibility as a teacher is to communicate the curriculum, right? And I'm a big believer that if responsibility training is something that we want to do, if teaching real world expectations, I think first we have to define what those are, and we have to agree what they are. We have to find ways to develop a curriculum, an overt curriculum, not a subverted curriculum that you treat differently than I treat, than this other teacher treats, right? The problem is we don't define it. We don't express what the winning condition is. We don't express what those standards are. We kind of allude to it in a, well, we need to prepare them. Well, that's a good, but we have to define, what are we preparing them for? Are we preparing them for a corporate life? Are we preparing them for a, I've got a quote that's going to come up here that I think really addresses this too, by a colleague, Tracy Arner, and I stole it from her, but I'm at least giving her credit because it's a brilliant line. But it has to do with, you know, we've designed school for what we think they need and what they want to be, but we seldom ever ask the students, so what do you want this experience to be? What do you want it to create for you? What skills do you want? You know, how can this be the best for you? We just don't ask them. Next steps, okay. So happy to talk next steps. If you're going to do something like this, there are now tools that you can employ. I mean, certainly we've got one that we're using, and I can talk to you about accessing it. Beta Teacher Badge Stack works really well. There are some new plugins for Edmodo, I believe, that allow for some of this. It may not be as robust. You may not have the same tracking tools. You guys know all about tool selection. Sometimes you get what you want. Sometimes you have to paste a couple things together. But the first thing I would suggest, if you're going to convert a class, say, to a game-based approach, don't throw out what you've done that has been effective. Don't throw out these wonderful, brilliant activities that you have created that are meaningful, right? Oh, sorry, that's the next one. Tradition. You know, the answer, honestly, is Tevye. Just because we've done it this way doesn't mean that it's always the best way. Don't don't confuse, honestly, the methods as outcomes, right? We're using this method, and this method we believe to be successful. Look at what's actually happening. You know, what experiences, skills, or dispositions are foundational, and how do we build those? And are we so committed to one concept, one approach, that this is the only way that it can happen? I jumped way ahead in this discussion here. There's a real value in free agency in life and in school. This does not mean that students will make the best decision each and every time. It means that often they'll choose something that isn't effective. But that clinical perfection that we often see in our minds as the only way of describing success is a farce at times. We need to give them that free agency and then discuss that, oh, you chose this activity, but you haven't done anything with it. How come? Oh, are you excited about it, or is it not what you thought it would be? Well, let me ask you this. What if I put you and her in a position where you are going to create something completely different? You don't even have to do the activity, really. I just want you to build a new activity for these guys. Would you be interested in that? Right? Giving them a choice of alternate opportunities, even creating in a curriculum. And by the way, in that setting, you know that they interact with it more deeply than they would if they did an activity that someone else created, right? I would highly suggest, if you're going to convert a class, define the winning condition. Make it reachable from day one, and allow them to always see where they stand against that, right? Multiple pathways. Yes, directing student learning, supporting, and coaching learners. My goodness, what a transformational thing that is for us as teachers. And to include them in the process, to remove the mantle, the yoke of having to create every activity, and doing a better job of saying, okay, well, if this one sucks, and I mean, it won't suck for everybody, but if this one sucks and you hate it, how can we do this better? What are some other things? You know, have you ever used this? Have you ever used this? Well, let's find some stuff. Let's come up with a better way to do this, right? Consider what they know and be willing to bring it in. Minecraft is a great example. Have students who love Minecraft. We're like, all right, let's find ways to use it. Have students who love the Xbox and the Wii. We found ways to use it. We created an activity in our pre-service teacher technology course where they play Wii bowling, and they populate a Wii bowling graph in Google Docs, right, which they share, by the way, Google spreadsheets, and they share. And it's got all these formulas already designed, and they're interacting with a spreadsheet while playing Wii bowling. Do they think, oh, I'm learning spreadsheet skills? No. They think, I'm playing Wii bowling and trying to figure out if the two players who are bowling traditionally are better bowlers than the two people who are bowling behind their back, right? Why test that? Because the theory is an 8-year-old can beat you at Wii bowling while sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, not even looking at the screen. How is that possible? Does bowling technique matter at all? Well, we can figure that out by looking at the difference between the first ball, right? If we look at, because the possibilities that are always the same. We built this activity to use this tool that fit a schema that they have, and because of it, they engage authentically with this concept. So how to use spreadsheets without even realizing that they're learning. It's one of my favorite things. Yes, Sandra, that's a great way to describe it. And the last piece I have for you is keep innovating, right? Have them innovate, you innovate. Class is always in beta. We're never going to arrive at that lie that we were told in teacher education that, oh, don't worry, after 3 years, your curriculum will be set and teaching gets easy. I hope that it never gets easy, because I think that's when it'll stop being fun. And really the last thought I have for you with just a couple seconds we have left, and then I'll answer any of those other questions, is Tracy's comment, right? We tell our school that school is what they need, right? Without ever asking them if it's what they want. And so this gives us a chance to really explore that question. And often, when we're locked into the grade book, these are great philosophical discussions to have, but until we're ready to throw it out and say, you know what? There are other tools, and they won't be perfect. They won't be perfect for many, many years. The Apple II wasn't perfect, right? The first iPod wasn't perfect, but that doesn't mean that they weren't groundbreaking and changed the way that people saw the world, right? Jackie Robinson's experience was not perfect for integration. These types of things will come with bumps, but once we move in that direction, the world changes. And we would never in a million years go back to a philosophy where we would say, you know what, someone who is of a certain race is not welcome in professional sports. We would never say that. It's asinine. It's ridiculous. But that comes from the point of saying, look, this is going to be hard. This is going to be different. It's going to be unpopular with many people, but this is the direction we want to go. And we'll figure it out as we go, but we're definitely going to move down this path. So, excellent. Yep. I love your comments. I want to see that I haven't missed any questions. I really appreciate you guys sticking out. I usually do my joke when it's a small room, and I forgot to. I wanted to say thank you both for coming. But all right, Steve, are there any questions or thoughts or things that I may have missed in the transcript that would be important to bring forward?
From my perspective, I think you did a great job. And if it's okay with you, let's cut it there so people have a chance to take a quick break before the next set of sessions.
Excellent. Yep. I dropped my email in the chat here. Please email me if you want kind of a backdoor into the tool that we've used. I'm happy to let you in and let you look around and play through some curriculum and see what you've got going. And I'd love for you to reach out and say, you know what, I'm using BadgeStack this way, or I'm going to try the Edmodo piece, and here's the experience I have, but I can do this, I can't do this. I would love to hear these experiences.
Chris, great job. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to turn off the recording.